to get out and about to the wilder parts of the UK to discover the conservation projects that help keep this country wild.
Over this series, we're travelling from rivers to mountains, from forests to seas, and even celebrating some of our wildest cities to bring you the best our country has to offer.
The UK is a lot wilder than you may think.
And this is your daily dose of the best that it has to offer. This is Wild UK. Each day this week, we're looking at a different wilderness and wild space in the UK. Today, we're looking at one of the more surprising wildernesses, one that's found in our towns and cities, the urban wilderness.
Today we're in Glasgow. Now, I'm not saying that this is the Serengeti, but it's surprising how many creatures have adapted to the hustle and bustle and noise of city life. Just like we have, I suppose.
And it's not all concrete jungle. You'd be surprised at how many wild pockets there are, even in our busiest cities. Where I live in East London, we've got allotments, parks, canals. In fact, 3/4 of our urban areas are classed as natural rather than built on.
And it's those kind of places that allow wildlife to live out their lives in our most populated areas. Later in the show, I'm heading to Newcastle and Gateshead to see a kind of bird that I have never seen in a city before. I associate them with isolated islands and abandoned headlands, but they've made themselves at home here.
We're joined by some familiar faces sharing their best past urban experiences, and I'm meeting Dr. Dawn Scott, who's discovering just how the most cunning of our native mammals is making a success of city living.
Fantastic.
But first, time for a snapshot of the UK cities and towns in 2017.
Across the UK, 90% of the population live in urban areas, totalling a staggering 59 million people. And that's before we even start counting the wildlife. It may come as a surprise, but only 7% of the UK's total area is classified as urban. And of that, over 3/4 of the land is made up of green space, rivers and parks. Plenty of space for animals cunning and streetwise enough to make us their neighbours. Gardens have become a rich source of food and homes for some of our most recognisable birds. And even some surprises. And in North London, gangs of fallow deer roam the streets looking for succulent grass. As our industrial rivers have been cleaned, wildlife thrives above the water. And that's because it thrives below. Nature can find a home nearly anywhere, so keep your eyes peeled. The UK is wilder than you think.
Throughout the week here on Wild UK, we have taken you to some of the most remote parts of the country. From the Farne Islands off the coast of Northumberland to the high mountains of Snowdonia in North Wales. Now, these are terrific wilderness areas with a great variety of wildlife to be spotted if you're lucky enough to get there.
But just how wild can it get closer to home? Here in the UK, 80% of us live in towns or cities. But if you know what to look for and where to look, even the most metropolitan areas can offer up a wild experience. In 2016, David Lindo took to the streets to give his top tips for city wildlife watching.
Birmingham, our second largest city, a hectic revitalised conurbation. It's also one of our greenest cities and, perhaps surprisingly, home to some of Britain's most iconic animals. You just need to know where and when to look. One of my top tips for finding wildlife at this time of year in urban areas is to head for some trees, but it does mean getting up early, but it's well worth it. And in central Birmingham, this means heading for the city's canals. The best place to experience the Dawn Chorus. That's a wren. It's got a classic loud voice with a trill at the end. And in the very background I can hear a blackbird. I love the mornings because no matter where you live, it's just a different world. All these voices come from nowhere, voices that you may not have even realised were there. A lot of research has been done on the songs of urban birds, and it's been found that, number one, they are singing a lot earlier due to streetlights and the fact that the nights are a lot shorter to them now. And also, their songs have changed. Some birds have become a lot more higher pitched and louder. Great tits, for example, their song has adapted because they need to break the noise of the traffic. And the rural great tits do not recognise the city great tits when they sing. Now for tip number 2, head high. In the centre of Birmingham, the new library provides the perfect place to spot one of the world's top predators. And I'm staring at that tower, which is one of the tallest structures in Birmingham, because there's a pair of peregrines actually nesting. So with any luck, we might see it fly out and actually give us a display flying around. Wow, that's amazing. Of a very dynamic shape. Surprisingly broad-winged for a falcon. Peregrines have been nesting on this tower for 16 years. Up to 6 pairs are now breeding in the city, a massive increase in the last few years. And a huge part of that success is down to the fact that they've discovered urban areas. The buildings that we construct are fantastic because they are artificial cliffs. They can nest in comfort. To add to that, they have an abundant supply of food, pigeons. Researchers found that city life is so good, peregrines hatched in places like this are choosing to breed in other urban environments. The thing I love about watching peregrines is the effortlessness of their flight, the way they just drift on the wind as if they haven't got a care in the world, and then, with like a flick of a switch, become this ultimate killing machine, diving at up to 200 miles an hour to hit a pigeon and knock it dead. And with that magnificence, that is why the peregrine is the king of the urban jungle. I tell you what, it's hard to top that for an urban wildlife encounter. Time for tip number 3. Keep an eye on social media. Just north of Birmingham, a small town within earshot of the M6 toll, where Council Ranger Rob Taylor has been monitoring an urban encroachment that sent the internet wild. So, how many deer do you think you've got here?
200 to 300.
What? There's actually 3 there. How long have these deer been coming here?
Up until the 1970s, there was no mention of red deer in this area because all this used to be old coal pits and mines. You know, there wasn't many trees in sight, but since then, the deer have been coming here because the trees have been planted as part of these community forests.
It's just incredible to see such a large mammal in such close proximity to humanity. These red deer have spilled out of nearby Cannock Chase, where a population approaching 400 is outgrowing the park. As they get used to humans, so there will be more close encounters like these. I am truly blown away by the sight of 16 red deer right next to a building site and also next to a housing estate in an urban area. I've never come across this before. I think the thing to remember is just imagine that anything can turn up at any time. You might come across a herd of red deer, you might come across something else amazing. So keep your eyes peeled.
David's right, you know, you never know what's going to turn up. And, you know, if you're walking to work or on your lunch break, if you keep a sharp lookout, you never know what you might see.
Absolutely. He might have seen red deer in Birmingham, but very near where I live in East London, there's even been sightings of a herd of fallow deer, especially in the autumn and winter. The deer are drawn in from the surrounding woods to graze on the short grass of people's front lawns and road verges, right in the heart of a housing estate where the residents sleep, blissfully unaware.
There's a great deal of activity happening in our cities under the cover of darkness. You know, when we close our curtains and draw down our blinds at night, all sorts of creatures come out, particularly mammals, badgers, bats, hedgehogs, and they go about their busy little lives while we're fast asleep.
But of course, there's one mammal in particular, isn't there, that's really become synonymous with urban living, and that's the red fox. And a couple of weeks ago, I went to Brighton to meet with Dr. Dawn Scott, and she told me how the fox has become such a city slicker.
Since they were first reported in urban areas in the 1930s, fox numbers in Britain's towns have been steadily increasing. Now, on average, there are between 2 and 12 adult foxes per square kilometre of urban area. To find out why foxes are thriving in our towns, I've come to Brighton, where Dr. Dawn Scott is running a groundbreaking study to get a better idea of how foxes are adapting to the urban environment.
So why do foxes do so well in cities then?
Well, cities provide foxes with everything they need. Secure places where they can den and raise cubs, and there's also loads of food. So what I'm going to do is show you a few places in cities that foxes like, which helps them to do really well.
Fantastic. Our first stop is a local park, and it's the least manicured areas that the foxes love best.
Scrub provides cover for them to have some securities to have cubs and raise them. So we're going to look for any signs of cubs, and that usually is worn ground, maybe shoes or tennis balls they like to collect, and also holes in the ground. So they're about that size, and you will get that really strong smell of foxes. This is such dense cover in here.
Yeah, there's some very clear trails along here as well.
There's a worn area under there.
Yeah.
And if I look down here, there's a worn area under here as well. So it might be that the actual den entrance is covered underneath the log pile. And that would be perfect because they like to go under sheds, very small spaces, to crawl in so that nothing else can get in there with the cubs. These little refuges are gems in an urban area for foxes. This is really what they need, and we need to keep these little rough places of scrub to allow the wildlife to flourish.
Dawn has been using electronic tags and motion-controlled cameras to follow the lives of 22 urban foxes.
So I have some footage here, and these are two foxes that we collared separately, Fleet and Fennec, and we think one's a cub and one's an adult dog fox. And when we started off recording them, there was definitely a submissive behaviour in Fennec. And slowly over time, Fennec became more and more dominant, to the point where Fleet actually left the territory completely.
Wow.
Out of the city and into a rural environment.
No, really?
Yeah.
He got booted out of town then?
Yeah, he ran off.
When Fleet took to the country, he covered 315 kilometres in less than a month, and that's a fascinating finding of Dawn's study. Compared with rural foxes, the territories of families in cities are tiny, only a few streets. Why? Well, it's the easy pickings.
In the countryside, a rural fox will be living on all sorts of things like fruits and berries and earthworms. What sort of things are they eating here? I mean,
Opportunities here are different, very different. When people get takeaways, they sometimes drop things on the floor. So the foxes have an opportunity to pick those things up that we leave behind, a bit like street cleaners.
a lot of people think of foxes going inside of bins, but they're actually just, we're leaving enough down on the ground for them to pick up and get a good food.
Yeah. if a bin is open and the fox can get in and something tasty, they will have a go. But a lot of the bins now are closed and protected, so it's not as easy to get food, but there's plenty about for them on the floor.
Foxes survive in our inner cities, but it's in the suburbs that they really flourish. Dawn's taking me to a house where they know they have regular visits. We're going to stake out their garden. Gardens with veg plots, composting, decking and sheds make great habitat for foxes, but there's one factor that's the main draw. People are increasingly leaving food out for them.
They're arriving in the gardens at the time when there's food, they're visiting gardens that have food, and so they're completely shifting their behaviour. And the family groups tend to be bigger. So what you're having is you're changing the population dynamics of an animal in this urban area as well. How they respond to us, it's fascinating.
We're sort of evolving together in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our stakeout isn't going very well. It's 11:30 and 0 foxes. But Dawn has a backup plan. This is one of the gardens where she keeps a camera trap, so we're checking the footage from last night.
I think the record we've had is 20 different cats in one garden.
And hello, cat again. Oh!
Yay!
Fantastic stuff.
So it's not a fox?
Yeah, if we've got badgers, then that makes me happy.
But we do have something
That
here.
does look fox-like, doesn't it?
Could be a fox cub.
Here's the badger again. We've just seen the fox cub, so they're almost at the same time.
Sometimes the foxes come up and nip the badgers' bottoms to get them out of the way of the food. It's amazing what wildlife you can see in an urban area. We're just talking about 2 animals here, foxes and badgers. There's loads more. Urban areas are incredibly special for wildlife, and we should savour it.
Absolutely.
The interesting thing is that generally across the UK, fox numbers are on the decline. So it's great to see that they can really thrive in our cities.
Absolutely, and I remember, you know, I grew up on the very edge of a city, and in those days I never saw a fox, and now every time I go back I'm seeing them in broad daylight. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that there's more of them, perhaps they're just bolder than they used to be.
Absolutely. Now, if you are an animal that can adapt to live alongside mankind, then that's only going to be a benefit, because unfortunately a lot of times our influence is more destructive.
And there's a real prime example of that now. Back in 1832, the very last great bustard was shot in the UK. But now there's a move to bring back this long-lost beast. Back in 2016, Springwatch went to Wiltshire to meet David Waters, who has been a driving force behind this project.
I think I've always had a really strong interest in wildlife, and as soon as I was old enough to walk, I had a pair of binoculars around the neck. My parents bought me a subscription to, I think it was a monthly magazine, The World of Wildlife. And I used to look at all the exotic or big, exciting wildlife, and it all seemed to be hundreds of miles away. And then I learned of the great bustards have a natural sort of aristocratic elegance about them. The bill is often just slightly elevated, and you can imagine live not only in England but in Wiltshire where I lived, and it had been persecuted to extinction. Yeah, I'm quite miffed about that and very disappointed. There was a place in Russia called Saratov where great bustard nests are actually destroyed by their methods of agriculture. I formed the Great Bustard Group, and the idea was we could just go and rescue some of those eggs, rear the birds, and release them. Now we're actually able to go and source our birds from Spain and then bring them back and do all the rearing here in Wiltshire. When a Great Bustard chick hatches, they're like little sort of Tyrannosaurus dinosaur. They can't feed themselves for the first 5 to 10 days, and they actually rely on mum to bill feed them. I can't pretend I make myself look like a female bustard, but I can at least disguise my features so the bustard doesn't realise I'm a human. Currently we've got somewhere, plus or minus a couple, 40 adult or sub-adult great bustards for display. And they're really sorting out who's going to be the dominant male. The full display of a adult male great bustard is, it's very, very spectacular, but it's also bizarre. And their wings and tail almost sort of inside out. It's got this inflatable pouch, a gular pouch that runs down the front of the throat, and it inflates it right up. All the underfeathers are on display, and they're white, very, very bright white. And it's just this big white sort of powder puff that doesn't look like a bird at all. There's this white blaze just appears on the hillside. When the males are displaying, it seems to be about size and whiteness. The great bustards see in ultraviolet, and we know the feathers of the great bustard are highly reflective for ultraviolet. So what's bright to us is probably sort of psychedelic to them. Nothing happens terribly quickly with great bustards. Males are thought to need to be 5 years old before they breed. I'm hoping that within the next 3 to 5 years we'll be able to say the UK great bustard population is self-sustaining. That's always been the aim of the project, but the last couple of years have really taken us close to that point. To have created a new great bustard population would be a fantastic achievement, I think.
They are seriously big birds.
Nearly as big as you, right, Colin?
You're not wrong. Well, the males can be about 1 metre tall, and they say they can weigh up to 18 kilograms, which is about the weight of a 4-year-old child.
And, you know, I've got to say hats off to David and his team for attempting a reintroduction, because these sorts of projects are really complicated, aren't they? And they can have lots of unforeseen problems and actually go on for security of that Ministry of Defence land.
Now, of course, normally wildlife decides on its own where it's going to set up home, and there's one particular seabird that has decided to do just that in the cities of Newcastle and Gateshead. And I have never seen them in such a location before, so I went there some weeks ago to check them out for myself.
Lucky you.
The city of Newcastle upon Tyne is one of the UK's busiest city locations. Together with neighbouring Gateshead, it's home to nearly 500,000 people and a hub of trade and industry. But amidst the hustle and bustle of everyday life, there are a few wild treasures if you know where to look. Roe deer, dippers, red squirrels, and along the River Tyne, otters, seals, and even a dolphin has been spotted. But perhaps the most famous wild resident can be found in spring and summer months, and thanks to its call, it's not too difficult to find. This is my first time in Newcastle, and what a wonderful place it is. I just love these bridges, they're absolutely beautiful. But I'm not the only one who appreciates these. Look at this, dozens and dozens of nesting kittiwakes. I have never seen them in a place like this before. I associate them, you know, with isolated islands and abandoned headlands. But they've made themselves at home here. Kittiwakes get the name from the calls they make. Kittiwake, 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 maybe. They seem to have established themselves on every little ledge that they can find around this part of the city. But they're not feeding around here. These will only hunt out on the open ocean. It's a long foraging journey in search of sand eels and small fish to feed their chicks. There are many nesting sites around Newcastle and Gateshead, but the most impressive of all has got to be the Baltic Art Gallery. And I've joined Kirsty Pollard from the Durham Wildlife Trust to get a closer look at these special birds. The best place for a fantastic view into their private lives is on the 4th floor. I can hear them anyway.
Here they are. These are our kittiwakes.
Look at that.
As you can see, looking at the Baltic building, it's a perfect replicant of a cliff edge. So the kittiwakes are happy, but they're also very sheltered. They're sheltered from the weather elements here, and they've also got lower levels of predation here. What's so lovely about seeing them so close up is being able to see the parents really both taking a part in that role. You notice a lot of head bobbing, and they both feed the chicks. And when you see them doing that and the sort of the bond that they have between the mum and the dad, it's quite heartwarming to see.
Now, they say that this is the most inland colony in the world, but how do you think they got here?
There are natural nesting colonies not far from here, up at Marsden and North Shields. Probably those colonies were just getting too full, and the birds were looking for extra nest spaces. And obviously the river is a natural sort of corridor for birds that like water. And they found a quite happy place at the Baltic and down at the Tyne bridges and made themselves at home.
They won't be here for the whole year, will they?
That's right, they arrive about March time, and they're here usually until about August time. So it's literally just coming in to build their nest, raise their babies, and then they go back out to sea. And that's where they spend most of their life. And we just get to tap in and enjoy a little bit of them while they're here with us.
It's wonderful listening to these sounds in the middle of the city, because, you know, it's not every place would accept 1,000 seabirds nesting right in the heart of their cultural centre. It's very encouraging. It means that, you know, in future, perhaps our cities can get a little bit wilder.
Well, that weather was a bit wild, wasn't it, Colin?
It certainly was. We were pretty damp at the end of the day, but, you know, I have always wanted to visit Newcastle and Gateshead. I think every person I've ever met from there over the years has just been a lot of fun. So I reckon the kittiwakes have chosen a really good place to set up home.
But of course, it's not just kittiwakes that have taken up residence in our cities. Most town centres you'll find gulls, but in Aberdeen, there's a much more unusual sighting, and that's the oystercatcher.
Oystercatchers naturally nest on the ground on shingled beaches. But in the building boom of the 1960s, many high-rise buildings were built with flat roofs covered in pebbles. Ideal places for them to nest. And even now, as roofs are being resurfaced without pebbles, keen birder Alistair Duncan is providing the birds with trays of little stones on the rooftops, and they're thriving.
Wow, oystercatchers nesting on a flat roof. That's amazing, isn't it? And it just goes to show that wildlife's everywhere if you just take a look. And if you need a little bit of extra inspiration, then here's our city guide to where the wild things are.
It's not just small stuff that can find a home in our cities. Even large mammals, like the red deer, can find space. The autumn rut of red deer can be witnessed in Richmond Park in London, where over 300 individuals run wild less than 10 miles from the centre of our largest city. One bird has become synonymous with our city centres and can easily be overlooked. But don't! Take a closer look, and the feral pigeon is actually a surprisingly colourful bird. They can be found in most of our major cities, where large buildings make great replacements for their natural cliff nesting sites. Our city waterways can be teeming with wildlife and are great places for bird watching. At the Weir in Dumfries, the fish and lamprey in the water attract an array of birds, including herons, gooseanders, cormorants, and grey wagtail. And in Leeds and doubtless other cities, the missel thrush is known to nest using the shelter of the city traffic lights to protect its brood. Forget rush hour, this is thrush hour. In suburbia, our homes, parks and gardens play host to nocturnal visitors. Hedgehogs snuffle from garden to garden, hogging the hedges and fences, and can be found across the UK.
It really is surprising, isn't it? The wide variety of wildlife that's made its home in our cities.
It really is, and you know, cities do provide you with a good opportunity to get close to animals. So if you're into photography, it means you can get some fairly sort of quirky shots because they don't run away from you. So I would suggest stick on a wide-angle lens and try getting really close.
All week we've been asking you to share your photos of wild places on social media using the hashtag #MyWilderness, and you've sent through some great photos of your cities, like these ones.
This peregrine falcon perched high on Manchester Cathedral, or this peaceful scene across Richmond Park in the west of London. All this week, as we celebrate the UK wilderness, over in Alaska, Matt Baker, Steve Bagshaw and Liz Bonnen are exploring the remotest parts of that region.
And of course, they're there to witness this animal extravaganza that's driven by the return of the Pacific salmon to the rivers of Alaska in order to breed. But of course, it's not just animals that are attracted to this annual migration.
It's also important for some of the people that make Alaska their home. On the final episode of Wild Alaska Live, they will be revealing the life of a fisherman who can make an annual salary in 1 week if the salmon return in good numbers. But what's it like trying to film all this? Wild UK went behind the scenes to find out. This is Bristol Bay. Almost half of the world's annual catch of sockeye salmon will be caught here over the next few weeks. Cameraman Mark Sharman has come here to film this extraordinary fishing bonanza.
Tons and tons of fish come in fresh, and then there's a huge cannery operation behind it. It's so productive, these waters.
Mark will be spending the next 24 hours on a 32-foot fishing boat, the Barnet. Deckhand Dustin is into his 3rd season aboard this boat.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we're here for. I mean, it's entirely exhausting, but we've been waiting for months and months for this. It's crazy. It's crazy.
So this is the main cabin of the boat. It holds all 3 of the guys, and somehow I've got to squeeze in. I think I'm going to be sleeping on the floor here, but it seems like it's all work and no rest.
It took skipper Joe Trosser 20 years to save enough money to buy the Barnacle, and he needs to catch a lot of fish to keep his investment afloat.
I think they're just expecting a whole lot of fish, which is a good thing. We'll sleep next week, I guess. Pat, you want to get your gloves on? We're going to set here. Okay.
To prevent overfishing, the industry is tightly regulated, and all the fishermen are given strict time windows to make their catch. This ensures that a large number of salmon can escape upriver to spawn.
These guys only had about 2 or 3 hours sleep in the last 24 hours. They're just going to push on through, because whilst the fishing is good, they're going to be fishing. And I'm doing my best to keep up with them and keep out of their way.
After a successful few hours of fishing, they fill their hold. Now they need to offload their catch to the tender vessel.
Did we get close to 3 bags full of fish? Okay, so close to 4,000 pounds.
The next location isn't proving so bountiful, but Skipper Joe gets a tip-off on where the fish have turned up.
We'll just head over there now and see if the show is still going.
Whoa, loads of them.
As the sun sets, the crew fight fatigue, but keep working. They can't afford much rest, as their fishing deadline will be up tomorrow.
Good first day. It's currently almost 1:20 in the morning, and it's time for a midnight feast and some wine.
It's the start of day 2. Joe's already up. He's been making coffee.
With the fishing cut-off looming, the boats jostle for position at the best salmon spot of all, the notorious North Market. It seems like every one of Bristol Bay's 1,500 fishing boats have congregated here, and they're all hoping to catch some of the 300 million salmon that migrate through this point.
This morning I wasn't quite sure if we were going to get that much fish, but it ended up working out really well. Yeah, it was a good day. I'm happy about it.
That looks like seriously tough work, but I guess it's a question of making hay while the sun shines, the summers are short, and everything's got to make best use of that annual bounty.
It's certainly keeping the Alaska Live team pretty busy, and you can catch up with them and all the latest happenings online and on social media.
Now, our cities are pretty, noisy, vibrant, bustling sorts of places, not exactly where you would expect to find our most colourful bird. But the One Show's Mike Dilger discovered this isn't necessarily the case.
The kingfisher is one of Britain's most beautiful and spectacular birds. But they can only thrive on clean, healthy rivers with a good supply of fish to feed on.
So you might be surprised to find they've recently been spotted on an urban waterway right in the heart of South London.
Over the last few months, Thomas Bergwijn has been watching and photographing these shy birds in the most unusual of spots.
Is that a shopping trolley?
Yeah, this kingfisher has sussed out that there was a huge shoal of stickleback using the trolley as an artificial reef, and it just perched itself on one of the wheels and had a perfect view to catch a fish out of the shoal, yeah.
And I know these photographs have taken an awful lot of work.
Oh yeah, I grew up locally. I've been watching kingfishers on these urban rivers for years, and it took about 6 months of my time.
And this one's amazing. You know, I've seen kingfishers in the countryside and they use sandbanks and they dig their own holes. But here it's found a drainage pipe in a concrete bridge.
Yeah, they've just completely adapted to the man-made environment. All they need is a bit of concrete, a hole, and they can bring up a whole family.
At first light, we head upstream to give ourselves the best chance of seeing them.
In the 1980s, this river was essentially a drainage pipe, polluted by human waste and industrial runoff. Now, although on the surface it hardly looks pristine, the water quality and habitats have improved enormously, enough to bring back a healthy supply of fish and, in turn, the kingfisher.
We cover ourselves in camo gear and get comfy. A kingfisher's territory can be 3 miles long, so it may be a while before it visits this section of the river. After just half an hour, it becomes apparent how rich and varied the bird life is in this concrete riverbed.
It's just such a good sign that the river's in fantastic condition.
Yeah.
But still, no sign of a kingfisher. That is, until a flash of blue shoots straight past us. It was an enticing glimpse, but the kingfisher wasn't hanging around. It was another 3 hours before our next visit.
Here it goes. Here we go, here we go. It's so exciting. There's a kingfisher on the branch just over my left shoulder.
Here it comes.
Wow, look at that hover.
The kingfisher is searching the water for fish. Nothing this time. But as we sit there watching, this stunning bird works its way from perch to perch. Whether it's an iron pole or a concrete wall, each location is a vantage point the kingfisher uses to spot fish.
It's just gauging kind of, you know, whether it can catch the fish or not, working out depths, working out angles.
Their eyes have evolved polarizing filters, which means they can easily see movement through the water's glare.
Up we go, swim. Oh, down into the water. There we go. It's diving for a fish. Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Back up. It's got a fish.
Yes.
Oh, it's using the bar to stun it so it can swallow it. And straight down the gullet. What a little jewel.
Kingfishers have also been spotted on urban rivers in Leeds, Coventry and Manchester.
This is crazy. That kingfisher's perching there, just metres away from people walking past to and from work on their mobile phones, and they have no idea it's there. We do.
I love kingfishers, and it's great to know that even in one of our busiest cities, the water quality is good enough to support them.
It just goes to show, doesn't it, that if the habitat is right, the animals will turn up.
Absolutely. Well, it's the last episode of Wild UK, so thank you for joining us, and we hope you've enjoyed discovering some of the best wildernesses that this country has to offer. Don't forget, the last episode of Wild Alaska Live this Sunday, BBC One, 7 p.m.
But for now, Lucy and I are going to leave you with some wonderful wildlife images shot right across these islands that just go to show that the UK is wilder than you may think. Thanks for watching.